Hot slachel, hot shudubushid. Good afternoon, good to see everyone. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna go over this intro to Lushootseed. What I've done is I've taken the information that is in this 101 textbook, and then I've just compiled some of it into a presentation. Feel free to read through it at another time, or if you've done that already, awesome. This will just give us an opportunity to focus on what is Lushootseed. Okay, where is Lushootseed spoken? We speak Lushootseed from up north in the Skagit territory. And here's the mountain range. We're between the mountain range and the saltwater, from as far north as Upper Skagit, following all the way down to the Nisqually area right here. And then we have some relatives that are out here on the peninsula. We have our Squaxin relatives, and we have our Suquamish relatives. So this is Lushootseed speaking territory. I do have this map up because we do have some numbers on here and we can talk about that. On the peninsula, our relatives speak Sklallam and Twana. Now what separates our languages, we're in different language groups, but we have so many things in common. A long time ago, our people would have spoke multiple languages. Our people would have been fluent in Lushootseed in many dialects. They would have been fluent in Twana. They would have been fluent in Sklallam. We also have our Straits language, our Lummi relatives speaking the Straits language. So we all would have been multilingual. It's one of those things that's kind of hard to process, how much our people utilized our languages within this territory compared to what's been done to us and what we're holding on to and trying to uplift today. For a lot of us, I would say that we've really had just that pressure of English surrounding us. Some people have been able to pick up learning other languages, but for a lot of us, we've really just fallen into this condition of being English speakers. So your guys' participation in this class is like that resilience of us reclaiming our language and finding ways to use it in every single day. So that's the territory of where Lushootseed is spoken. If I had, which I do have a bigger map. I think sometimes we get thrown off by that colonial border that was put in place. And looking at this map, sorry, let me bring it here so it's out of that light. So looking at this map, yes, we have colonial borders where up here is Canada. We've got Vancouver Island. If we look at how close that territory is, we would have spoken the languages, our languages would have stretched onto that area. When we look at where we are located, so right here in Tulalip, knowing that our usual and accustomed territories took us from the mountains to the saltwater to the islands, we're so close to Vancouver Island. I like having this map out as well, just to take another step out and look at the territory that our ancestors covered. And then think about how closely related we are to our relatives on the peninsula, our relatives up north, and then just seeing the relationship to the land. So the common languages within this territory, Lushootseed is our main language in this territory. And then close to us on the peninsula, Sklallam and Twana. I love being able to hear some of their speakers because they will say words that are similar. We say Yahweh for eagle, and on the peninsula, I've heard them say Yahweh. So it's super close even though it's a whole different language family. So this is that same map that we're looking at, talking about from the mountain range to the salt water. At the time of the signing of the treaty, there were over 40 Lushootseed speaking tribes. At the signing, at that time in 1855, there were over 40 Lushootseed speaking tribes. Today we list 11 recognized tribes. And we all know that through the signing of the treaty, through the removal of our ancestral territories, that is what started condensing us into larger groups. I was going to say smaller groups. The smaller groups being absorbed into the larger groups. And when we start talking about the relationships that we had within the water systems, that's where it starts to make more sense. Maybe I'll take that opportunity now. When we look at a map, we consider this being the right way to look at a map. And every time you have a map, even though it's not on here, you would see like north, south, east, and west to let you know that your map is in the right direction. The way that our ancestors viewed the territory, we do not have words for north, south, east, and west. This is how our ancestors viewed the land. We have directional terms for upland, up the river, up the creek, down the river, out into the salt water. Our direction terms are based in our relationship to how we traveled on the land. So when we start thinking of how at one time there were over 40 documented tribes, and how because of that colonization being forced onto the reservation, how we started losing those groups and they became condensed. For Tulalip tribal members, that's what we all know. We all know that we're not Tulalip people, we are the people of Tulalip because Tulalip is the name of our location. We all have our own lineage that we can connect ourselves. When I was growing up, I knew that I was Snohomish. I knew I was Snohomish because a lot of us here in Tulalip have that common ancestry that we can connect our elders to the Snohomish territory. The more research I've been able to do over the years, I've been able to discover my relationship to the Skajatabj and to the Sakbiuf and Soyakbiuf, to the Sdokwalbiuf, to the Poyalapaj. So I've been able to do some lineage, some genealogy research, and now I've been able to start to discover just how far my lineage spans within this territory. We can even talk about over the mountains, where we have our relationships and our strength by having marriages over the mountains and why that was important. So that's where we started to see the loss of the number of tribes that were within this territory, is at the signing of the treaty. We're condensing these populations. Tulalip, we do say Skykomish, the Snohomish, Skykomish, Snoqualmie, allied tribes and bands. I can't remember who else is named on there. Don't quote me. Don't get mad at me. But that's within this territory, within these river systems. And there is not a Skykomish tribe because all of those ancestors were forced to move here. And they still had those connections with one another because they traveled along the same water systems. The Lushootseed sound change, our language over 200 years ago went through a sound change. At the time of contact, we used N's and M's in our speech. Today, after that sound change happened, which could have been a pressure from English, there's not really one thing to pinpoint what caused that sound change. We now use B's and D's in place of M's and N's. That's going to be another cool thing that we'll be able to look at when we go through each one of the river systems, each one of the tribes. At the time of contact, our people would have said Snohomish, Snohomish. Today we say Stohobsh, Stohobsh. Snohomish is how our ancestors said it. So Snohomish is how it was written phonetically into English. For our relatives, hey, shout out to our relatives tuning in right now from Swadubsh. At the time of contact, our relatives up north, they would have said Swanumsh, Swanumsh. So those N's and M's are in that speech, Swanumsh. And that's how it was documented phonetically as Swinomish. Today, our relatives say Swadubsh. So we're using the D's and the B's. So that reminder that the names of the tribes, the names of these locations, they were written down by the government officials. So that's a cool thing to also pay attention to as we're driving down the freeway and we're seeing these names pop up, is being able to know like, hey, those are our people. This was documented because our people were here. So connecting us to this place. I do want to note that the surrounding territories still use their M's and N's. This is one that I learned in the past couple of years. We say badat, badat for one's child, beat badat for baby. Our surrounding relatives say manat, manat, which is using the M's and the N's. They're still holding on to those, and that means child or baby. So around us, they're still using M's and N's. For whatever happened to our language, whatever that shift was, we use D's and B's. We still have one word, meatman. Meatman, who knows what that is? Meatman, small, meatman. That is one word that we still use the M and the N. We notice that quite a few of our tribal names have that mish ending. Snohomish, Skykomish, Stologwamish, Swinomish, Suquamish. That mish ending means a group of people. We use that when we talk about the tribes, the groups of people who were occupying the territory. So yes, that you'll notice that in English it's mish, but we have obsh, poyala pobsh, the people at the bend of the river, duf squally obsh, that obsh ending is the people towards the grass or prairie. Skajatobsh, we have that obsh ending, squach sudubsh. So it's either going to be ubsh or obsh. But knowing that those endings mean a group of people. The other ending that we saw, or that we recognize at the end of tribes' names, is in English it would have been documented as me, mu, or mer. So snoqualmi, that ending, that me ending. Okay, I want everybody to take out their birthday candle. So take out your birthday candle. Blow out your birthday candle. That sound was one of the first sounds to go. That sound also cannot be written in English phonetics. They couldn't write it down. So when they heard snoqualmu, snoqualmu, they were like, I don't know how to write this. So it ended up being written down as snoqualmi, snoqualmu, snoqualmer. That R for the mer is either English or French speakers when they were documenting the name. So that R sound in French has more of a guttural sound. That ending is bew, or mew. Bew, mew means group of living beings. So it's not just talking about atzil talbu, people. It's talking about anything that's a group of living beings. We're able to utilize this when we talk about large game animals. Tatachalbu. If we're talking about our plant relatives, guadbu, which are the native blackberries, or we've utilized this when talking about groups of people. For the guadbu, that's one of my favorite words. It's also one of my favorite berries to go and pick. How many of you guys are familiar with guadbu, with the native blackberries? You want to. You've been berry picking with your grandma, haven't you? Yeah. So the guadbu, we know that they are very unique based on their name. Guad means lower. You guys are familiar with the word guadil, which means sit down. It really means become lower. Bring yourself lower. Guadil. So that guad part means lower. The bu, group of living things. The group of living things that are down low. And that refers to our native blackberries. They vine across the forest floor, and they are the tiniest little scrumptious berry. We haven't had any good luck getting the guadbu the past couple of years. We've kind of missed that window of opportunity. It's kind of sad. But that lets us know when we're talking about guadbu, we're talking about those amazing little berries. We're not talking about these invasive Himalayan blackberries that literally have taken over my whole house at one point. We're not talking about those. We're talking about the living beings that are down low. I love that word. So we also see, not just in Snoqualmie, we also see it with our Sakbu and Soyakbu. They also have that suffix meaning group of living things. And Suquamish has an alternative name for their people, the Itakbu. In old documents, you see Snoqualmu, Itakmer, because of the English and French missionaries that really struggled to find a phonetic way to get all of the sounds in our language. So Abj or Ubj is group of people. Bu is group of living things, group of living beings. Now, looking at the big picture of Lushootseed, we have what's left. At one time, we had 40 different tribes, which all would have had their own dialects based on the places that they were living. Now, because of the colonization and forced onto reservations, we are left with two dialects. We have Northern Lushootseed and Southern Lushootseed. Up here, we say Duh Lushootseed. Down south, I've seen our Puyallup relatives call their language Tulalip. And then our Buckleshoot relatives, they call it Lushootseed. So you'll hear Tulalip, Lushootseed, Duh Lushootseed. Those are kind of the different ways that you'll see the language noted in the language. For northern speakers, it's going to be, so Tulalip right here is within the Stohobj territory. Stohobj was right in the middle. We are the southern part of the northern speakers. So everybody from us and north speaks Northern Lushootseed. And then everybody south of us speaks Southern Lushootseed. We are right in the middle, which made us unique because we speak mostly northern, but we do have southern influence. And if we were to view our territories the way they were at the time of contact, we could understand why we had those influences from southern territories. Because if you look at our water systems, the Snohomish and the connection to the Snoqualmie River system, Snoqualmie is technically a southern language. What makes the dialects different? Sometimes completely different words, and sometimes it's the pronunciation. We can also have differences within our dialects. So northern speakers, there are some differences. Tribes along each river or water system have their own versions of Lushootseed. Skagit River tribes say spots for black bear, while the Snohomish River system people used a totally different word, Shchutwood. Skagit River tribes pronounce the word for the number 4, boos. So the double U is like the oo in moose, while down here in our territory we say bos. It's like the O in gross, that O, bos. Not big differences. We were able to switch back and forth and understand one another without too much issues. When we look at northern versus southern, we do see a bigger difference. There are different words, different groups of words. I'm not familiar with counting from 1 to 10 in Lushootseed. I know that we use a different counting method. Right here in Snohomish, for some reason, we're also very unique that for 1, we just say ch-o, ch-o, while everybody else around us says dutch-o. So that's one thing that's also unique. This is where the difference between northern and southern is where we also see a larger difference in being able to understand one another. In northern Lushootseed, we say shood to see something. Shudu beat seed, see you. Oh, hot shudu beat seed, it's good to see you. In southern Lushootseed, they say labd to see. Labd du beat seed, see you. And I think they also say he instead of ha. So they would say he labdu beat seed, where we would say ha shudu beat seed. Kind of slows things down because you really have to study the language to know what is northern, what is southern. How is a southern speaker going to greet me? Do I stick to my northern response, or do I try to respond to them in southern? So it slows things down. I get intimidated when I run into a speaker from southern Lushootseed because I know I'm like, okay, you got to try to figure out what they're saying. Are they using northern, southern? How are you going to respond? It's just like, it makes me super nervous. In the old days, nobody was bothered by that. People were multilingual. They spoke multiple dialects. They spoke different languages. The importance of our connections, our marriage customs would bring other languages into the home. And children were raised to be multilingual, where today we don't see that. I mean, I'm hopeful that we get ourselves to the day where our kids in the community are bilingual, speaking Lushootseed and English, and encouraged to add more onto that. I do know one person from up north who speaks like 7 different indigenous languages, and it is so amazing to just sit back and listen to them. What are some of the changes in the language, the pressure from English, that cha, should, that X-rays W being dropped started to change the language and how people would speak. So if their ears were tuned to hearing English, you won't be able to pick up as much of the Lushootseed. That's where I connect with that breakthrough. Growing up, I didn't hear words to the salmon ceremony songs. I don't know if they were singing words to the songs. My ears weren't tuned to be able to hear our language. When Shelly put those tapes in front of me and told me to listen to them, I could hear the words, and it started to change the way that I would sing. So when I sing the songs and I participate, I use the language. So it's something that if people's ears aren't trained for it, then you're gonna miss out on some of those super unique sounds. We know that with like Hudson Bay Company, with the forts down south, that there was a huge influence of English that put pressure on our ancestors and their ability to hold on to the language, trying so hard to hold on to their language. Being in competition with English, sometimes it would shift the grammar. So they would be thinking in Lushootseed, but being conditioned to speak in English, so the grammar would start to change, and they would be speaking the Lushootseed language, but with English grammar. We'll notice as we get to it that our language, the grammar is different. We talk more about what we're doing before we talk about ourselves. So it's a verb, Lushootseed is a verb-based language. Whereas English is, I did this, and I did that, and I did that. It's very noun-centered. So the pressure from English affected the pronunciation, affected the grammar, those unique sounds, people not being comfortable or confident to be able to, like those sounds started to drop. One of the words that, or two words that we like to bring that up about, adult is human hair. Adult, so having that adult, and skudzo is a squirrel. So you're talking about two totally different things, either skudzo, human hair, or skudzo, a little squirrel. So if you're talking about brushing your skudzo, you want to make sure that you're getting that. Otherwise, you're talking about, oh, it's just brushing my squirrel. So the loss of those sounds, those guttural sounds, that started to shift the language. We're not going to expect everybody to get all of those sounds down perfectly, but we want to provide the opportunity to go through sound charts so we can build our comfort and we can listen for those differences. So Snohomish, we talked about it being like right in the middle of northern and southern. Mostly northern use of the language, but southern influence. I love this example. Our people did not like the transition of how we protected our feet in comparison to what was being forced to be put on our feet. So they viewed the word shoe as log foot, because I felt like you're sticking your feet into these stiff logs, and this isn't comfortable. When we look at those words, since we're in the Northern Territory, you would expect that we would use the word log, which we use kwashite. We use the word kwashite for a log or a stick, plus the lexical suffix shud. So kwashishud would be the word for shoe, which is what some people use. But since we have that influence from the Southern Territory, we actually use the word for log in Southern Lushootseed, stukwab, along with that lexical suffix for foot, and we say stukwabshud. I don't know what's easier, stukwabshud, kwashishud. You still have some sounds that you really need to enunciate. Okay, this is one of my favorite parts. I like being able to talk about the tribe names. So actually, instead, let me see. Let me give you just a brief history of our program, and then we'll come back to the tribe names. The Lushootseed program was established in the early 90s. Toby Langan was, she was a student of Mariah Moses. Mariah Moses welcomed Toby into her home, had a great respect for Toby's willingness to dedicate her life to studying the language, to preserving it as is, as the ancestors spoke it. So Mariah took her in, and they had an agreement. What we do not know what that agreement is, but Toby, who is still with us today, she still communicates with us. She still tries to support us. She does not work for the tribe anymore, unfortunately. So she's not our current master teacher. I think she's still our master teacher. But Toby still holds on to an agreement that she had with Mariah. And she said that her work is not done until she fulfills that promise that she gave to Mariah. And she has such a love for the language that's not even her own, that she really tried to make sure that every student that she had understood the importance of the unique sounds, of the grammar, of staying on top, like not getting lazy with your research, not getting lazy with your use of the language. So Toby was one of my first teachers. She's the one that Mariah had recommended to help establish the Lushootseed program. She has her doctorate in English, so her ability to teach the language and mentor teachers, she's the one who helped establish the Lushootseed program that fell under cultural resources. Our manager was the late Quit Kadam, the late Hank Gobin. We've used elders' recordings and documents. Teachers over the years, we've had well over 35 teachers who have started in the department, stayed in the department, moved on to other areas of the tribe. But we've had like well over 35 teachers come in and out, weave in and out of our program. And I think that's powerful, because that just means that's 35 more people who have welcomed Lushootseed in and have found their way to keep the language going, including our relatives in Swinomish. We did have Kyle and Olivia Bailey, who worked down here with us for a couple years, and now they're up in Swinomish and they're teaching the language to their community. The locations that we're dedicated to the early learning program. At one time, they were separate: Montessori, ECAP, daycare. But now they're all here. The Betty J. Taylor Early Learning Academy, we commit ourselves to every single classroom there, offering instruction Monday through Thursday. Michelle is working at Heritage High School. Her and Thomas work at Heritage. Michelle works at MP. I help her out with first period. We used to work at Quill, Tulalip Elementary. We used to work at Totem. But we just don't have the capacity to do that right now. We do have hopes of continuing to grow and reaching our students, so there's no break in learning. This class is offered through NWIC, so we do have the college level class. We do all types of outreach. Our department just went and did an opening blessing for a group that's utilizing the Orca ballrooms for their gathering, or we do classroom outreach. We have Lushootseed learning apps. We have the font available, video, CDs and DVDs. That's funny. We don't use those no more. And our website, tulaliplushootseed.com. So this is just kind of like, this is what has been done. Lushootseed started out as a program, then it became its own separate department. Previous to the department or the program being established, we had community members who were teaching Lushootseed. Grace Godell taught through Everett Community College. My great-grandma Elsie taught community classes with my Uncle Pat. We have Mariah. Mariah taught her family, and she taught Toby. So we have our elders that were still doing the work without the tribe's assistance. And we're grateful that the tribe did decide to establish the Lushootseed program. Giving thanks to our ancestors. These are just a few pictures. Right up here, the first picture is Grandma Lizzie. We've used a lot of Lizzie Christ's audio. She sat with this gentleman in the other corner as Tom Hess. Lizzie and Tom sat together, and Tom would just go through a whole list of words. How do you say Monday? How do you say Tuesday? How do you count from 1 to 10? How do you say this? How do you say that? So Lizzie took the time. She was hesitant at first, but she did take the time to sit with Tom and to do those recordings. And we utilize a lot of that in the work that we do today. We also, okay, I had to look at my time. The middle picture is the late Saswichab, Martha Lamont. Martha told epic stories. They would be called epic stories because one of her stories is over 900 lines in Lushootseed. And from that 900-line story, we have this little piece that was actually used in testimony during the Bolt decision to help secure our rights to our usual and accustomed fishing grounds. So her big, huge, epic story, this little piece of her story was utilized for testimony. We have Harriet Shelton Dover and Morris Dan, all of the work that they did to bring our communities together to revitalize the salmon ceremony and to know that all of those songs have words to help us go step by step, teaching us what to do. My grandma Elsie Price, my great grandma Elsie Price, the work that she did in the community. And we have our ancestors and everything that they endured going through the boarding school that was just right over here by the water. Everything that they had to endure, the things that they held on to, unfortunately, the things that they had to let go of, we still honor them and we still remember them for everything that they did. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to our local tribe names and meanings. Tulalip. Right outside these windows, we have the beautiful bay. And everybody in here is familiar with Tulalip Bay. And we know that, let me check on the tide real quick. So the tide is it's higher right now. So you can't see the sandbar. Low tide, you can almost walk across the bay. That bay was named Tulalip. Tulalip. Duh is a direction term, to or towards. Lil means far, and op means bottom. They called Tulalip Bay Tulalip so that anybody visiting here knows you have to go far towards the bottom of the sandbar in order to land your canoes on the inside of the bay. That's the heart of our reservation, and that's why Tulalip was chosen to be the name of our reservation. They couldn't pick just one group of people. Multiple tribes were placed here, so Tulalip was the choice of naming our reservation. When we look at some of our relatives, the Stolaquabsh. Let me switch this around. The Stolaquabsh. Stolak means river. Absh, people. The people of the river. We do have variances that would switch back and forth. So you'll notice in the blue, we have at the time of contact before the sound change, we have that written down. The K raised W and the G raised W would interchange. So at the time of contact, they would have documented that name as Stolaguamsh, which is where you see Stillaguamish, the influence for writing it down phonetically in English. Stolaguamsh, Stillaguamish. Nikita, how does our Stolaquabsh relatives, is it Stolaquabsh? Is that what you guys use?
We use the G.
You do use the G? Stolaguabsh?
Yeah, I believe we use the G.
Okay, Stolaguabsh. Okay. So that's did I say I was going to make that correction last year?
Maybe. I don't remember.
Brian, make a note. But those are interchangeable. The K raised W and the G raised W. And we'll get to that later. There are some words that you'll be able to see how those switch back and forth. Our Swadubj relatives, this Swadubj comes from the root Gwad. We talked about Gwad, the Gwad Buf, the group of living beings down low. Now, when we get to talk about our Swinomish relatives, there's a connection to the upper Skagit. So the Swadubj or the Swinomish, they're located at the lower end of this water system. And that talks about the connection that they have to their upper Skagit relatives. So that's in location when we look at a map in this manner. That's where we get the understanding of why did they use lower? What was that in reference to? It was in reference to the water system. Our Snoqualmie relatives, Sdoqualbiu, there are two different translations to their name. I believe they call themselves the moon people. The root dok means to transform. Then we have the all connector, and then bu, the group of living beings. So there is one of the translations that they're the transformation people. There's also the translation, the moon people. At time of contact, they would have been referred to as Snoqualmiu. Snoqualmiu. Today we say Sdoqualbiu. Sdoqualbiu. But at the time of contact, Snoqualmiu is what brought Snoqualmie. Nisqually, our relatives. People are familiar driving within the Nisqually territory. Nisqually territory. I'm like mixing my languages up. Squally is a word for grass or prairie. Duf is that same direction term like in Doflelap, to or towards. And then Abj, group of people. It's the group of people towards the prairie area. And I like to think of this when I'm driving down the freeway and I'm headed to Olympia and you take that dip down and then you see the Billy Frank Jr. Wildlife Preserve off to this area, and then you see the grassy area off to the other side, and then just thinking of that territory, the different ways that they would travel without the territory. They're the people towards the grass or prairie. At the time of contact, no squally obj, no squally obj. This is an example where the obj got dropped off when it was written in English. So instead of them referring to them as Nuf Squally Obj, they referred to them as Nuf Squally, which is where we get Nisqually. For our Buckleshoot relatives, Buck, all, Shoot, see, the see everything people from their territory, they have a vast range of sight of everything around them. They would have said Muckleshoot, which is where you get Muckleshoot. Today we say Buckleshoot, and I have a typo on that one. All right. I also love this. The late Takshablu. One of the quotes that she had in reference to the language, Gwa Lushootseed a quihak to all quihat hutch a ti to ishidchach. May we continue speaking Lushootseed for a long time, as did our ancestors, with good hearts and minds. So that ends the presentation, the slideshow for this. Let me turn this off. That is everything that is within that textbook. All of this information for this presentation was pulled out of the textbook. We will have the opportunity to dig into place names and get a better understanding of all of those place names. But if you want to, at any time, there's a little bit more information in the textbook if you want to read up on some more. But I got us to 12:51. So, uhoyachad, we are all done for today. Now we can time that presentation at being 45 minutes. Does anybody have